Seng, and I'm a data analyst in the Science for Management section at the Reef Authority. Today, I'll be talking about how we've been working to operationalize data provision for decision making. First, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am presenting today, the Wulguru Kaba and Bindal people in Townsville, as well as the traditional owners across the GBR and its catchment. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. The Reef Authority recognises traditional owners as the first scientists of the land and sea, and values their traditional knowledge, which continues to inform the current management and stewardship of the reef. So, operationalising data provision for decision making. What does this even mean? For me, it means ensuring that useful datasets, often spatially explicit, are available for use when they are needed and in a format that they're understood. This means that many of these datasets, which also include model outputs, will be used for purposes beyond the original, often very specific aims under which they were collected. As one colleague recently said, the results are transferable to many scenarios. Why is this bit important? It's because reef managers, ourselves as the Reef Authority, traditional owners and other government agencies, have to make decisions every day to the best of our abilities, irrespective of what data and information is at our fingertips at the time, about who can do what, where and when, about which things money, time and human resources will be spent on. Most of the time it boils down to conflicts in values and use. Where do important processes on the reef intersect with important uses of the reef? That data gets used beyond its original scope is also important, because for many of those decisions, we don't have a dedicated team of researchers on hand, available to help, and this is where knowledge brokerage comes into play. So knowledge brokerage. Some of you may have listened to Cindy Hutchery's talk during the 2022 Social Science for the Reef Symposium. It's all of 10 minutes long and well worth a watch. The conclusion is that there is actually no bridge to cross between science and management. While our constraints might be different, our goals are the same. So we really are standing together on one side with a problem, in this context, a decision that needs making, trying to build or cross a bridge towards a solution, a decision that is based on the best available evidence. Not every project needs to be highly collaborative, but starting from the same place is important. This session promised to be an interesting and exciting mix and overview thinking with proper decision support tools through to detailed ways that knowledge brokerage has occurred successfully, especially in the prioritization of COTS control implementation areas. The Reef Authority also engages in knowledge brokerage in other areas, and the Science for Management section's purpose is to support the long-term protection and conservation of the reef by facilitating access to and communication of science and knowledge for effective reef management. We have three broad groups of activities. First, we broker, collect, and engage with the scientific community, partners, and stakeholders, focusing on increasing the agency's access to knowledge about the reef and working to ensure strong coordinated partnerships between the science and management community. Secondly, we synthesize, analyze, and share data and information, which is also about focusing on the agency's access to knowledge, but in a data literacy context. Data can be interpreted and contextualized for new purposes, and ensuring strong partnerships. Many of us have research backgrounds and know the value of involving data providers when using new data sets for the first time. Caveats, potential limitations, factors to take into consideration are all important. Finally, decision support, a collaborative approach to ensure the best available information is used to inform resilience-based management of the reef, working on bespoke products with individual teams on specific questions. So, resilience-based management at the Reef Authority takes place within the context of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Act from 1975, which established the Reef Authority, broadly aiming to preserve the region's values. In 2015, the Australian and Queensland governments released the Reef 2050 Long-Term Sustainability Plan, which is the framework that partners collaborate on to make our management most effective. RIMREP, the Reef 2050 Integrated Monitoring and Reporting Programme, is a partnership between multiple agencies, ensuring that the science and knowledge collated through Outlook is driving our management responses. And there'll be a presentation about this during the conference at 10:45 tomorrow in the Urchins Room. This diagram explains how it works. It starts with our objectives and management needs, articulated by the Reef 2050 plan, and ends with evidence-based management. In the middle are the three sections where our work focuses. Collect is where we gather data and information. Access is the behind-the-scenes data engineering to provide access and connect data streams. And Show is where we do reporting, creating data visualization and decision support tools, which are all made available on our online portal called the Reef Knowledge System. So back to operationalizing data for decision making. Some work we've been doing has focused on providing situational awareness, in this case, primarily the physical and environmental context within which decisions are being made on the reef. It builds on some work done to assess cumulative impact. In this case, thermal stress, cyclones, crown-of-thorns starfish, freshwater runoff, and combining them into an index of exposure. How do we make these products accessible to decision makers and, importantly, up to date? These analyses need rerunning annually and after major events. So also, considering just the index on its own, the reefs in the region could be ranked from good to bad, but if, for example, a permit assessor wanted to evaluate the pros and cons of allowing collection at a reef or giving the green light to a pilot restoration project, it would be much more informative to be able to interrogate the data set that sat behind the index. So this is now when I introduce the Resilient Reefs Network guidance tool. So currently proof of concept stage, so it's not targeted or tailored towards specific decision making. So to be a proper decision support tool, it would need to be tailored towards answering specific questions. This view shows whole of reef level information. So there's different aspects of situational awareness. There are the individual pressures, which can be considered bronze or raw data sets in data engineering speak. In this case, showing the cyclones that cross in the 2013 and 14 summer, an estimate of cumulative exposure and recovery potential, both silver or analyzed data sets, and the combination of both into one index of resilience potential, a gold level data set, one underpinning a published product. There are several ways to calculate this resilience potential, and depending on the specific question, a knowledge broker would be able to provide guidance around known caveats and limitations. Data can also be viewed and interrogated for individual reefs. So going back to my previous example about a permits assessor, this dashboard shows how much physical impact a reef has experienced through time. If it were recently disturbed, then allowing collections is probably not the wisest choice. For more reef, which you'll be visiting at the end of the reef, it shows exposure to thermal stress, cyclones, and crown-of-thorns starfish. If it's about a restoration project, using the wave model to highlight where on the reef strong waves are likely to come from might be valuable. Permit assessors are kings and queens of scenarios. Each assessment must consider 14 separate mandatory considerations, which are detailed in the Reef Authority regulations. These include biological impacts, cultural impacts, policy and legislative requirements, and orderly and proper management of the marine park. This tool only considers biological impacts, but also provides some extra filters that can provide context for the others. For example, the zoning, which zoning areas different reefs fall on, whether they're surveyed as part of different monitoring programs, whether they're in upwelling or in different bioregion areas. So this covers what I just said about permit assessors, but also during a permit assessment, each of the 14 considerations requires a different viewpoint, and availability of data that can address these views is highly advantageous. Data relating to resilience, so functions, structure, processes, is highly relevant given that it is a core component of resilience-based management. Data assessing potential for damage to ecological and social systems, including cumulative impacts, is vital. Allowing access to verifiable and usable data sources is in everyone's interest, as it allows for more effective assessments and greater understanding of proposed activities. So the bulk of the work for the Resilient Reefs Network guidance tool was done 3 to 5 years ago, and I'm excited to see how many of its core data sets have evolved and developed through the various previous presentations. Eve-Marie's keynote, a much more sophisticated and whole-of-system way of bringing some of these data sets together. All the coral and larval connectivity work, which I'm looking forward to being able to incorporate. As the way the method was put together, is I hope that it will easily be able to slot new data in. And even the wave models that aren't formally included in assessments, but are present for additional information. As it stands, however, this tool that I just presented is what is accessible by the majority of Reef Authority decision makers on a day-to-day basis. So with that, my key messages. A key barrier to operationalizing evidence-based decision-making has been access to up-to-date data and in a way that is easily interpretable for the decision being made. So let's celebrate the DMS, the RimRep Data Management System, is the next step to actually achieving actual connections to live data sets. And if you would like to make a difference in how your research is incorporated into Reef Authority decision-making, consider making your data sets available through the RimRep Data Management System. And not just your final model outputs, but also your bronze and silver data layers, the data sets that underpin the final results and outputs. They are so valuable for providing context and guidance for interpretation uncertainty. Please get in touch, science@gbrmpa.gov.au. And finally, I'd like to plug again the RimRep talk tomorrow at 10:45. Thank you.